you go.
There we go.
Best.
Our agenda for the evening, move through, get to our program, which will be Gary Borger talking about the angler as predator. But I guess we'll first move sort of through the announcements. First, I'm going to turn it over to the mayor of Merrill Lake. Warren, are you with us? You want to talk a bit about the Merrill Lake cleanup?
I am here, and I'd be happy to talk about Merrill Lake. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. We've set the cleanup date for the spring cleanup for Saturday, April 3rd from 9 until about noon. Not sure how many volunteers we can use at this point because of the COVID, but Bart has put my contact information on the screen, and April 3rd will be before the next meeting and before the April barb comes out. So this announcement and the next barb from Gary will be the two main opportunities for people to get the contact info and to give me a call. And like always, I think we need some regulars with gas-powered leaf blowers. And I will return every call and email that I get to let you know if there's any change in the time, the date, or whatever we're doing. I also have a little bad news that I'd like to share tonight, and that is Carlo from DNR told me about 10 days ago or a week that the purchase of the Weyerhaeuser property at the southwest end of the lake, or southeast end of the lake, I should say, did not go through. The state auditor said that the property only is worth about half of what Weyerhaeuser is asking. And so Carlos said the money is still there. Weyerhaeuser is threatening to put the property back on the market. And Carlos said, we're just going to have to wait and see. But I'm now wondering if the logging goes on, if that will be a kind of a mixed blessing. I'm not too sure that anybody's going to want to buy that property with the way that the environs around the lake are going to look. But anyhow, that's another chapter to be written. That's it.
Always something.
So Warren's contact information is there. So if you're wanting to participate in that again, please contact him. He does need a list. I think with all the restrictions and protocols we have to deal with these days, we definitely need to know who's going to be there, and just showing up is probably wouldn't work very well. So thank you, Warren, for putting this together yet again, and hopefully we'll get it done, and hopefully the weather will be nice too by April. Just an announcement, membership renewals are due by the end of March. And so make sure that we have them ASAP, don't wait till the last day. And just a reminder also, for those who may have previously renewed last year and not using the current form, make sure you've got the current form in with your current contact information and sign that form. That also includes the new liability waiver, and we need that signed. So if you were good and sent it before the end of the year, make sure that we have the signed form also. Phil and others and myself will be contacting you if not. So Phil, I did skip right over the membership report. I think, do you have the current, the number of membership renewals we have to date that you reported at the board meeting on Monday?
I don't have it in front of me, no. So sorry about that.
Give a swag.
Well, it's less membership than typically would sign up because we haven't been having membership meetings. And so I concur with Bart saying that. Please get them in, because otherwise you're going to get an email from me, and I hate email, so it might be a nastier one. Just kidding.
So if you want to avoid a nasty gram, get it in soon. And if you know other members who aren't participating on Zoom and they think they may have not have sent in their renewals, egg them on, and let's get that done. So Perry, you want to talk a bit about the picnic here coming up in August?
Yeah, so we're going ahead with plans to have a picnic. It'll be scheduled right now for Saturday, August 14th at Fallen Leaf Park in Camas. The one thing that you will find different is that we will not have a picnic as far as a potluck, but we will encourage everyone to bring a picnic basket for their family. So we're still going to try to keep it a little more within the social distancing. We're going to try to do it, make it a family-friendly picnic, and have lots of games for everyone to participate. And we'll have activities probably going on for 3 or 4 hours. So I'm going to try to have a schedule put out. So it's not like you have to come at a certain time because we're going to be serving food at that time, but we will encourage everyone to bring a picnic lunch for their immediate family members.
What date was that?
It's Saturday, August 14th. And I don't have specific times as yet. It will just depend on several different things that as we get things planned. But I just kind of mostly want to get it out there to let people know the date and that it won't be a potluck picnic. We will be providing drinks and probably individually packaged desserts of some kind, like cookies or muffins or something like that.
What park?
I'm sorry, what?
What park is that?
Fallen Leaf Park. That's
Thank you.
Fallen Leaf, Leaf Park, and that's in Camas.
Thank you.
Twinkies.
Standing, and thank you for your team for putting this together this year. So Ed, I'm going to turn it to you if you're with us. Talk a bit about the conservation report and the Manley Creek stream planting or not. Not sure he's with us.
Here's not.
Appears not. Well, Manley Creek stream planting, I think, has been rescheduled for Friday. It was postponed, I think, from Tuesday due to the snow. And so if you plan on attending and want to be kept up to date on whether you're going to participate or not, there is Ed's email there, and email him about your participation. I think it's going to have to do with snow cover, and I don't know if Manley Creek's anything like my front yard. I'm still under snow, and if it's going to be under snow, I don't think we're going to do it. So make sure you email and stay in contact with Ed. A couple of other items I do know under conservation is that the club has received a grant request that we're mulling over from the Lower Columbia Fish Enhancement Group. We also, with the help of a number of members, did submit comments to the Department of Natural Resources concerning the double haul timber sale. And I think as a result of those comments, some areas that were being planned to be logged that were on unstable slopes were withdrawn. So that does just show you that half a life is simply showing up. And so thank you for those of you who did show up and did more than show up and help put together, I think, an outstanding letter that was, I think, made some differences on that timber sale. It's still going to be logged around Merrill Lake. It'll still be a visual impact, but hopefully we've lessened any other environmental impact as a result of the sale due to our participation. So thank you once again. You know who you are, and so thank you for helping us with that. And I think, doing this off the top of my head, I've probably forgotten any other portion of the conservation report. So thanks. So, Mr. Golub, want to talk about the outings?
Sure. So just on this slide, I got a couple of slides here to go through the next sort of 4 or so outings, but just we had a pretty good turnout for this Sandy River outing that we had on February 6th, and the river was in good shape and the fish were unharmed.
Good.
Go ahead to the next slide. All right, so coming up here this weekend is the East Fork of the Lewis River. Mike Hoover's the fish master for that. And I think, Mike, you're on. You want to say a few words about what the condition of the river is and what the plan is?
Yeah, I've been checking the river, and it's actually dropping. You'll love that. It was running at 14 feet, and that's fishable area at 14 feet, but it's now down below 14 feet. It's running about 1,340 CFS. The biggest problem with up around daybreak is above the bridge, there's quite a bit of debris in the river from the high water we had several weeks ago. And I'm not sure if it's not driftable, I don't think, from Louisville down to daybreak in a drift boat. Pontoons could probably get around the debris. A couple of years ago, we lost a tree above daybreak and along the path that goes to the upper part of the runs up there. And that whole bank area is decayed to the point where now you have to walk out in the field to get up to above daybreaks, above the bridge. The river actually looks very good. And at this height, it's very fishable. Unless we get a very high freezing level, it should be very good for Saturday. So the only thing that I'm thinking is it probably won't be a good drift, but all of the local runs like Daybreak itself, the hatch or the gravel pit, the county barn, and the church or the cemetery hole, those should all be good areas to go fishing unless you want to go up above and fish up higher. But I'll be there on Saturday at 9 and have maps and be ready for everybody.
All right, and I think we've got, what, about a dozen people signed up at this point?
Approximately 12, yes.
Yep, good.
And I sent out some emails this afternoon to the people that have signed up. Anybody who wants to show up, you're always welcome.
Okay. All right, great. All right, so next up after that is the Olympic Peninsula outing. This is the first time in several years we've gone in the spring for winter steelhead. And Dave Schwenk's going to be the fish master for that. I think Dave's on. I'd give you the opportunity if you want to give any details, Dave.
Well, since this is the first outing to Forks in the winter in a while, I'm still working out some of the details. You know, we're dealing with a new outing plus COVID restrictions still. I've got 5 people signed up so far, so please shoot me an email if you would like to go. People seem to be staying in several different locations, so it looks like we're probably just gonna, you know, meet up at the foot in somewhere, or people can float different rivers. You know, it's kind of up to you, whatever you want to do on this outing. I am trying to organize a Saturday evening social, looking at picnic area at the Kalawa River State Park, which is on the very north end of Forks. I think it's probably going to be a bring your own beverage, bring your own rain shelter type of deal, because I don't want everyone trying to cram in under one tarp. Other than that, you know, we're kind of just playing it by ear. I think we're probably going to float the bogus shield at least one day, at least some of us. But you know, we're kind of figuring out things as we go on this particular outing. But yeah, please do send me an email if you would like to go. I do have a pretty detailed list of potential float options that I can send out to anyone who signs up. Yeah.
What's your email, Dave?
Sorry?
What's your email address?
Oh, it's ORRET20 at gmail.com. Should be in the barb and on the website as well.
Yeah.
Okay, I found it.
All right, thanks. Let's go to the next Lake Lanice. So Dan Green and Steve Jones. Steve, I know you're on. I don't know if Dan joined or not. If you guys want to say anything about the Lanice.
Hello, Dan, are you there? Doesn't sound like it. Okay, so I'm headed up there on March 1st. I plan to be up there for the High Lake openers, and I'll have more intelligence after that. The one phone conversation I've had with the WDFW High Lakes guy in Spokane was that water's up. Other than that, it's pretty much status quo. So once I get back, like March 6, 7, I'll send out an email blast to everyone. So if you have signed up, that's great. I could share my information with you on the 6th, but everything there is pretty much as it's always been. There's no change to the camping. It's very primitive. The pit toilet is being serviced every 2 weeks.
All right. Thanks, Steve. I think we got one more here. So then we go to the East Side Lakes, and Roy and Donna are going to be the fish masters for that. I saw that Roy was on. The one thing I want to mention here, the Central Oregon fly fishers asked to join us on one of our outings, and this is the outing that they will join us, and then they offered to reciprocate. They're going to send me a list of some of their outings this spring if we want to join them on one of their outings. Just, you know, this area is a lot of different fishing opportunities, so I think it's probably one of the better ones if we want to have another club join us on. So Roy, anything you want to add for the East Side Lakes?
No, I think it's pretty much all in the barb. The one thing I would say is if you're going to take an RV over there, you might want to call and make sure they have a spot for you. They said they're pretty full this year.
Yeah, I think that's true. As we look down the list of outings, you know, for the Crooked River that's coming up after that, and the John Day, and, you know, the campsites seem to be, you know, filling really rapidly this year. So as we look at those outings, we want to, if you're planning on camping out or attending, you probably want to make sure you got a campsite. So I think those were the ones we were going to talk about this time, Bart.
Certainly. One thing I did note, I think you brought it up last meeting concerning the float on the John Day, that they was going to require a permit.
Yes.
I note that the permits open March 1 for that stretch. So I'm not sure how quickly they go, but I guess if you want to be first in line, the line opens on March 1. So.
Yeah. And we're looking at probably meeting there on the John Day at Spray, and that Spray to Service Creek is a pretty easy one-day float if that's if you're interested in doing that. And then just a reminder, you know, for Lanice, make sure you got your fishing license for 2021 at the 1st of April there.
Outstanding. Well, thank you, Michael, and thank you to all.
Also, you have to have the one thing for Lanice, you need the state part, the public lands pass. I forget what it's called for Washington.
Discover Pass.
Discover
Yeah.
Pass.
Discover Pass. Thanks. Sorry.
Okay.
Super. Thanks, Michael, and thanks to all the fish masters who are helping to make this happen. So now we come to fishing reports. It sounds like we'll have some fishing reports after tomorrow and this weekend. And we heard about at least the steelhead was seen on the Sandy River last week. But anyone been out fishing? Anyone got some reports? This is a sad state of affairs, gentlemen.
It was cold,
Well,
cold and
okay.
snowy.
I was on the North Fork of the Nehalem 2 days ago, and got a hatchery fish above the hatchery. and it was not a big fish. It was probably in the neighborhood of 7-pound buck. And that's it
That's
for
something.
like 4 outings.
That's
Was that
something.
swinging?
Excuse
That
me?
was swinging, Steve?
No, actually, I was nymphing. Water was a little high. The rain had come up, so I was trying to get down, and I did hook up.
Steve, were you above the bridge? Were you
No,
above
I was
63?
No, I was right below it where Soapstone Creek flows in.
Yeah, right at
to
Soapstone.
Yeah, North Fork, right
Did
there.
you come in from the north side of Soapstone?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I came in from the hatchery side.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
Although
Any
we
other
never
fishing reports
available-
out there? Any other close adventures of any kind? Anyone get out at all?
Or whitefish.
Okay. Well, that means we may have 0 nominations for a wind knots, because I think you have to go fishing to have a wind knot. So,
I've got a win knot.
oh, here we go.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Paul and I were competing for a Win Knot award.
Oh, come on now, guy. You're the one that broke an oar. I only broke a handle. So Dave and I went on the Sandy outing, and he and I went the Dodge Park to Oxbow section.
Oh.
And so there's some rollers. There's some big water in there. I can understand why most of us don't want to do that. And so anyway, I just got a little tug, and that was it. I was swinging. Dave was nymphing. I'm surprised he didn't pick up something, whitefish or something, at least, if not a steelhead. But anyway, we were floating down, and he was careless and broke an oar, but he had a backup. So.
Yeah, that was my attempt to win knot. I think Paul beat me by flipping his pontoon.
Whoa.
Oh.
He didn't mention that.
Wow, this sounds like a pretty eventful trip.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
So interesting, but the rest of the trip was quite exciting.
Well,
how was the pipeline hole?
Sounds uncomfortable. That's all I
You know,
can
the
say.
pipeline hole was actually relatively easy.
yes, we both went right through it.
I had been telling Paul I wanted to stop and scout it, and Paul just charged right through it. And at the bottom of it, I was like, oh, well, that wasn't too bad. And he's like, oh, that was it?
So did you fish the blue hole below it?
We did briefly, but I found it difficult to fish. It seemed like it was a giant back eddy. Yeah, we fished it briefly, but then moved on. There were other much better runs.
All right.
So
Yeah,
Glad you folks are both safe here, and it sounds cold to me, but
So that section does have lots of habitat for steelhead. There was so much water that had big rocks in it that just it could have steelhead. Some of it is just difficult, even with a spey rod, to try to get a cast out because of overhanging trees. But yeah, we went down through a rock garden, and luckily the water level was high enough, because that place would be a nightmare. Below, I don't know, Dave, below, I don't know, maybe 1,500 CFS. You would just be.
I think it would have been really, really difficult. Anything under 2,000.
Yeah. So what were we at? 3?
Yeah, 3,400, I think, something like that.
Okay. So I was in I had these 9-foot bucks bags on a 7.5, 8-foot water skeeter frame that I like, and Dave was in a 9-foot Dave Scadden, but a raft, frameless. And we went down through this rock garden. I was ahead of him, and I was on my oars. I wasn't goofing around. I wasn't taking photos. I wasn't reaching for a beer. And so I saw these 2 rafts. So I saw these rafts ahead, back up above. Dave and I, he got below me, and I thought, oh man, I see these 2 rafts. But as when we launched, we saw several rafts, and I thought, you know what? Those aren't fishermen. These were like 14 foot rafts that there was no rods. And it's like, yep, sure enough, because this river section has enough rollers that people go out rafting anyway. And there's no drift boats. So for obvious reasons, the pipeline alone, you could just flip a drift boat, and the roller I flipped, you could also flip a drift boat. I caught my right, I was on my oars, and I just went in at a slight bad angle. A roller caught my right front pontoon, and boom, it flipped me from left to right, upside down. And I had most of my stuff tied in. My cooler, even the night before, I was like, you know what, I should strap that in or use my other one because it didn't have a latch. Anyway, did lose my 3 beers and my Clark-Skamania flask that's I probably put $50 into over the course of a year with our damn brewery.
Oh man!
I finally won one of those, so yeah, I'm kind of throwing that.
Dear.
Well, I think we've defined the wind knot. The wind knot's not the flipping of the raft. The wind knot is the loss of the beers and the flask.
Actually, it gets better. It gets better, and I know we got a time thing here. So I had my 13-foot spay rod out, flipped the boat, boom! I bump my head up. Okay, my head hits the frame, and then I come back up. I'm wearing a life jacket and the whistle that the Fishmaster gave us. I had another whistle anyway, and I can whistle with my fingers. But anyway, didn't need a whistle, and those 2 rafts right over there, and they saw me, and they did the whole pat on your head. Are you okay? I said, yes, I'm okay. And one of the women said, there was 2 rafts, and one of them said, do you need help? I said, yes. Maybe you could tow me to the shore. And so I'm drifting downriver, raft upside down. Oh my God, there's my 13-foot spay rod completely intact. And I'm reaching for it, but I got another set of rapids to go through. Shit. And so I'm going through the rapids. I grab my spay rod, and then I'm floating down, and the woman said, and I look back, where the hell is she? She was kind of lollygagging on her oars. She didn't come because she had yelled, get your oars. I said, they're locked in. And so I'm trying to grab my 3rd one because I brought an extra, but it's tied in, and I couldn't get it. I'm too worried about my rod like an idiot. And so I go through that 1st set of rapids. Okay, I'm fine. I'm dragging oars and an anchor. I'm concerned about that. Now I'm fine. I'm wet, but I'm comfortable. I'm not panicked at all. I'm actually a quite good swimmer. But then, oh, great. So there's a 2nd set of rapids. Oh, my God. I look back. She's not there. Dave's way back there. I'm sure he's coming. I've got my rod.
As hard as I can to catch up at this point, but Paul's just way ahead of me.
I got my rod. I mean, this river is moving somewhat. And so now it's like a 2nd set of rapids. God, son of a bitch, And so I finally get my 3rd oar undone. I'm using it as a paddle. I can't fight the current. I'm trying to get to the side. Then after that, I go through a 2nd set of rapids. And finally, there's a tree floating out in the middle of the river. I think, I'm going to try to aim toward that. And again, the current was too strong. I hit the tree, can't grab it. But after that, I'm finally able to oar to the shore. It was some really slick, muddy clay, but I was able to flip my boat back over. And I had a dry bag full of some extra clothes. I've always complained to myself about these Sims waders I have, that they're too damn tight. I will never, ever again complain about those too damn tight waders. My feet never got wet. Is that insane?
Whoa,
I was soaked to my waist. I went under, right? I had my glasses on, didn't lose my baseball cap. I lost my 3 beers, my Clark-Skamania flask, with some cinnamon whiskey in it. And
okay, here's your flask. We got a spare flask over here. We can help you out with this. It's even got your name on it.
I was hoping for that sympathy flask. And so, my God, Steve, I'm able to fit. Dave comes down to me and looks me straight in my eyes. Are you okay? I go, yeah, man, I'm fine. I'm fine. And so I changed my clothes. We hang out right there. I eat a sandwich. My God, I got my cooler. He found a water bottle. He said he saw a couple of my beers floating down, but he wasn't able to get to them. And
I did rescue your Winston rod.
Yeah,
Oh.
and my Winston rod was in my other rod holder. So he got that. So that was nice. That
Yeah, Winston Rod. Yeah.
Well, I think we have a winner
Pick up,
here.
Cody.
So
Anyways,
bottom
quickly.
line on this float, always wear your life jacket.
Absolutely.
Always.
And tie that
prevented a
cooler
real
in.
tragedy.
And tie your cooler in so you don't lose all your beer. I went downriver with fishing, and I see the 2 rafts, and the woman that said, yeah, do you need help? Yes. And she doesn't help me. She yells over, hey, you want a beer? Yes. And so she is ready to throw it to me. And I go, you can't throw that to me. She was too far away. So she started oaring in, and I was going to walk to her shore. She kept floating downriver. What? Hey, do you need help? Yes. Crickets. You want a beer? Yes. Crickets. Oh my God, who does that on a river? Anyway,
Sure.
it was fine. I didn't catch anything, but that same rod is okay. So one thing I want to talk to you guys all. Tim Radjeff with Radjeff Sports is 4 doors down from me in Vancouver here. And I wanted to go tell him that story because it was an Echo rod that I was using. And the thing is untouched. I can't believe I went through 2 sets of rapid. Well, I actually, the first set of rapid, I grabbed the rod. But to flip that boat and not break that rod is crazy. I lost the anchor, lost the beers, the flask, and a hat. Big deal.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think
we have
that's
a,
the
I
best
think we have a
possible
winner
outcome.
here.
I'll vote for him.
Close nominations here.
Yeah.
All in favor of the
Unanimous.
3 beer loss and
Aye.
the flask?
Aye.
And
Aye. It's unanimous.
unanimous. And I think that's going to be a tough one to beat this year too. So
Yeah, you may be
but
looking at
we
a
have
title for
real triers amongst
2021.
Well, what was crazy was I fished the rest of the day with that rod.
So, do I have Chris on the line here? Chris, I'm going to pass this off over to you.
All right, I am. And tonight for the presenter, we've got Gary Borger. Most of us have seen his name somewhere on gear or on the agendas of shows or on covers of books. He's had to break away from a major remodel project because I always seem to be interrupting it when I make a call to the house. And so he's here with us. He's going to help us with our fishing techniques. Presentation tonight is the angler as a predator. And so I saw Gary was on, so I'm hoping that we've got a connection now for his share.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Excellent. Let's do a share screen then.
Okay, I think we can do that.
It says the host has disabled the screen sharing.
Yeah.
There you are.
There we go. How's this?
Great.
Let's get that. See. How's that? That look good?
Much better.
All right. Well, let's start. I got to mention before we take off, so that the angler's predator doesn't mean you're supposed to dive in the river and try to bite him in the back of the neck. All right. Water's pretty cold for doing that this time of the year, especially. Oh my gosh. I honestly had a near-death experience one time duck hunting and being in a lake for about 4 hours. So that idea of getting in cold water just does not appeal to me at all. Anyway, let's go on with the program. Let's look at these things. As a predator, we really need to understand the 3 basic biological drives of all organisms, not just fish, but all organisms, from bacteria all the way to humans. Notice the size of the type I used. Number 1, save your butt. That means that all organisms, humans, fish, deer, dogs, horses, anything else, number 1 biological drive is to save yourself. And when you're swimming in the river and it's icy cold, beer doesn't mean too much. Getting up on shore and saving yourself means a whole lot. It means a whole lot to the fish. This is the key to everything that we need to think about when we think about being anglers, is number 1, save your butt. Number 2, the one we hope for, is that they also want to fill their gut. And number 3, have kids. So Save your butt, fill your gut, and have kids are the three basic biological drives of all organisms. Number one is save your butt, which means that fish are always, always, always watching for predators. Now, are you a predator or not? Well, you may not be a predator. You may want to just kiss your fish and put them back. But I guarantee you right now that the fish doesn't know that. It thinks you are a predator. It thinks your job is to catch them, to kill them, and to eat them. And so that's the way it's going to treat you, and that's the way it will respect you, and the only way it will respect you. Of course, you know, we all say, oh, I'm a catch and release fisherman, until you get a nice big old brown trout like this, and you go, you know, maybe I should take this one home and show this one around. Although that's not a particularly big brown trout. I mean, yeah, it's probably 32 or 33 inches, but that's not a big brown trout. Big brown trout are ones that get 36, 38, 40 inches. Those are big brown trout. This is when I lived in Wisconsin, and we caught a lot of these. The biggest one I caught there was around 26 pounds. So they're big brown trout in the Great Lakes. And the only place I know is Terra del Fuego that has bigger brown trout or better fishing for big browns. Anyway, this fish doesn't know that I don't want to kill it. I mean, it's flopping trying to get away. So as soon as I get the photo, I put him back in the river, he takes off. It doesn't lay there and wait for me to pet him or anything. It thinks I'm a predator, and it's going to treat me like a predator. If I'm going to be a predator, then I have to understand how predators act and how the fish perceives me as a predator, because if I can do that, it will maximize my ability to get close enough to be able to cast to them. This fish, this particular fish right here, I actually spent about 30 minutes sneaking up on it to get in position to be able to cast to it. Took the fly on the second swing. And I caught one right before that. There were two of them on the nest, the big male and the big female, and I caught both of them. They were both about the same size. If I just waded in and made a cast to them, I probably would have spooked both of them. So you need to really think about this. If you're going to have an opportunity to catch a fish of some size, especially of some size, that have been around for a while, they really understand this concept of predator. And you need to be able to understand how they're going to perceive you and how to minimize their ability to perceive you. Now, this is the way you become an average angler. You just walk up the river casting, and whatever takes your fly, you're happy with. If you catch a bunch of 12-inch fish, well, you had a good day. If you catch a 20-inch fish, well, you had a spectacular day. The problem is, in this country, not necessarily in other countries, but in this country, the problem is that we have more small fish than big fish. As a consequence, people catch more small fish. As a consequence, they really develop what we call small fish skills. That is, they're not real careful in approach. If the fly drags, they really don't care because it's a small fish anyway. I mean, this one I'm holding here, what's that, only 18 inches? Something like that? You know? Yeah, right, yeah. Well, you'd catch it, you'd say it was an 18. That's about a 11 or 12-inch fish right there. And this was in a very high area, 11,000-foot river in Argentina. And that would have been a big fish in that stream. So, yeah, you know, catching big fish depends upon the size of the fish that live there. But in our country, most of our streams have way more small fish than we do big fish. And as a consequence, we end up catching a lot more small fish. What we really need to do is we really need to pretend that the fish that we're fishing for are all big fish. And then we need to treat every one that we see rising as a big fish. You can look out there and tell if it's a big fish or not when you see the nose poke out. If it's just a small fish, fine. But pretend it's a big fish. Instead of just casting and saying, oh, I didn't take it, and don't worry about it. Figure out the best place to stand, the best fly to put on, check your leader to make sure there's no knots in it, get into the best position to do the casting so the fish won't see the line come in, make the kind of cast that the fish won't see come in. And then when the fish does take it, then get them on the reel and pretend it's a big fish and fight them off the reel a little bit. By practicing like this, when your opportunity comes to catch a bigger fish, you'll be prepared and ready to do it. Now, let's look at some of the things that predators really need to know. As fly fishing predators, we need to know how to cast. Most people see this cast and go, how in the devil did you do that? Well, that's an under the rod tip loop. And it's a really, really good way of keeping the line low, so there's less chance the fish is going to see it coming in. Anyway, there's lots and lots of things we can talk about in terms of casting. We're not going to talk about a lot of them tonight because I just want to mention the fact that you really do need to know how to cast and be able to cast well. Not just get the line out 30 feet. but be able to control loop shape, be able to do curves, be able to do mends, do all the kinds of things that you need to do to get the fly on the water in such a way that the fish thinks the fly is something good to eat without spooking the fish in the process. That's the definition, by the way, of presentation. So to be able to do the kinds of things that we need to do and want to do, you can make a cast like this and you can make a negative curve out of it by dropping the rod tip. The line then falls in a negative curve, and you can see the water's flowing here from my left to my right. And if I just drop this cast, it'll give me a really strong curve to the right, and I can run it down through that area right there without any drag on the fly at all. So knowing how to do all these kinds of things with a fly rod, and the more we fish and the more experience we get, the more we should try to develop these kinds of things, because the more you know about casting, the more opportunities you end up having, because you can get your fly in places that other people can't. I did a video called The Perfect Cast 1, which is 72 minutes. And I don't know if the club has that one or not, but it's only $15. And it has all the basic stuff on casting and mending in it. Anyway, let's race wildly onward. As a predator, you are a hunter. I know we're fishermen and we don't like to think about us being hunters, but we are. We really are hunting big fish. We really are just hunting fish, period. And in that regard, we need to know the way that the prey actually senses us. Of course, when we're hunting deer, we know they hear us, we know they see us. We know that if we get upwind of them, they'll smell us and so on. And we don't have to worry about trout necessarily smelling us, but we do have to worry about them, the way they see us and the way they hear us, relative to our positioning and relative to the clothing we wear and other sorts of things. The interesting thing is that fish have serious disadvantages when it comes to seeing us and serious disadvantages when it comes to hearing us in particular situations. And that's what we want to look at and think about. We need to know, as a fly fisher, predator, hunter, that fish do have good vision. They have color vision, and they have good vision that will allow them to see us and to see our movements. Underwater, they can see anything that we could see when we're underwater. If you put a face mask on and go underwater and look around, you'll see exactly the same thing the fish sees. When you look out of the water, you'll see the same thing the fish sees, but it's very much different than just looking through the air. The reason is that water has a different refractive index than air. Air has a refractive index of 1, and water has a refractive index of 1.333333, and so on. So when light passes from air to water, or backward from water into air, the light is bent. And you can see on this diagram right here, light coming straight in from the middle, that's called the normal light going straight in, just goes straight in. But if it comes at any angle at all, it's bent up toward the center, toward the normal, we call it. If you look at the arrows, look at the one that's on the far right-hand side of the screen, as I'm looking at it anyway, probably same for you. There's an arrow that's coming in that's fairly close to the horizontal, and look how it's bent upward. If that light went straight in, it'd be a very much different angle, but it's bent upward. What actually happens is that all the light coming in from above is bent in such a way that it forms a cone on the surface with an apical angle down here by the fish's eye of 97 degrees. So when the fish looks at the surface, it's actually looking through a cone with an apical angle of 97 degrees. What that means is that light is distorted as it comes in. And now let's see if I have that. Oh, here's what I wanted to show you. See the bend in the stick? That's refraction. You cannot change that. You can understand it, but you can't change it. And you see where that rock is? That rock's actually twice that deep. We're going to get into that in a couple minutes. But the rock is a lot deeper. Look at where the water line is. That's on the 20-inch mark, and Nancy's hand is up here on the 40-inch mark. This is a meter stick. So from the water down to that rock, it's only 20 inches. Well, look, that's a lot less looking than the other 20 inches. Yeah, that rock's a lot deeper than it looks. We'll come back to that in a couple minutes. So what happens is we get what we call Snell's window because of refraction. And the size of Snell's window changes as the fish moves up and down on the water column. When the fish is deep, Snell's window is large. When the fish is shallow, Snell's window is small. the radius of the window, from the center of the window to the edge, is almost equal to the depth of the fish. It's just a tiny bit more, but close enough to be basically the same. So if the fish is down 2 feet, its window is 4 feet wide. If it's down 6 inches, its window is only a foot wide. When fish are very close to the surface and feeding, as you'll often see them, you know, when there's a heavy hatch on, a lot of times they'll get up, their nose will just be poking out once. And when they're that close, their feed lane is extremely narrow because their window is extremely narrow. If they're deep, obviously the window is much wider. Obviously they have much wider feed lane. But on the other hand, when they're deep, they have to spend a lot of energy to come to the surface. So if they're deep, they're not going to come to the surface for small items. Usually when they're small items, they get close to the surface. This gives the fish some serious problems because when it's close to the surface, items in the window are more compressed than when the fish is deep. So when the fish is deep, you look big. When the fish is close to the surface, you look small. It's much more difficult for the fish to discern you when it's close to the surface. So you can actually get much closer to the fish than you can when they're deep like this. Now, here's what really happens, and this is very interesting. When light comes in under 10 degrees, some of it skips off. We call that glare, and we wear polarizing sunglasses to eliminate the glare. Because when glare skips off, it's the light that's moving side to side. Light that's going up and down goes in. So that light which skips off, we filter out with our polarizing sunglasses because the grid in our polarizing sunglasses goes up and down, and that cuts out the light that's coming side to side. But what happens is, when the light does go in, all the light under 10 degrees is compressed by about 10 to 1. What that means is anything that's in that 10-degree angle is massively compressed. And I've got some photos to show you that. The massive compression of items in that angle means that if you stay under the 10-degree angle, you literally become just a part of the mass of compressed images at the edge of the window. Now, the height of the compression zone from the water surface up to 10 degrees, that distance is 1/6 of the distance to the fish. So if you're 36 feet away from the fish, the zone is 6 feet high. So I'm 6 feet high, I can stand 36 feet away and be in the compression zone. Basically, I am of no concern whatsoever to the fish. However, my fly line is, and my flashing fly rod may be. So when I tend to get close, I tend to sidearm cast much more than overhead cast, trying to keep my line low. And I use lines that are not fluorescent. I use lines that are more natural colors, tans, olives, olivey green, yellowy olive, those kind of colors, because they're much harder for the fish to see as it comes in. Keeping it low and doing that makes a big difference sometimes whether you can take a fish or not. Now this is New Zealand. And this guy's standing on a rock. Let's just look at things. There's a mountain in the background with lots of green trees on it. He's standing on a gray-white rock. There's plenty of rocks around. The water's nice and clear, but you can see he looks normal. He's got, 2 feet, and he's got a fly rod, and he's casting, and everything looks sort of normal. Now look at this. Here's the shot from underwater, the same guy tying on a fly. He's got 3 legs, not 2. In fact, he has 1 huge leg and 1 other leg sticking out the back. He's all compressed, and the edge of the window is sort of wrinkled here. You can see the edge of the window. Now the question becomes, where's the mountain and where's the white stones and everything else? Well, if you look on the left-hand side of the photo, right up at the edge of the window, you see a dark green mass over there. That's the mountain. If you look just underneath where his mysterious 3rd leg is poking out there, you can see a little bit of white. That's the rock. Now follow that on around to the right and just look at the edge of the window. You see a little bit of white rim there. That's the rock behind him. In other words, that stuff is so compressed, it simply becomes a part of the edge of the window. You can't see his feet. If you look very, very carefully, right at the bottom of where he is, you can see a little bit of sort of a light brownish color and then a darker mass. That darker mass and that little light color right there, that's his feet and the lower part of his legs. So what happens when the fish is looking at the window is that anything out of that 10-degree angle becomes so compressed that it simply becomes a part of the edge of the window. It becomes undefinable, really. If you were under that 10-degree angle, you'd just be an undefinable blob that the fish would have no concern with. Now, watch this, because this is really cool. As soon as you start to get a little riffle, look what happens to the angler, the image of the angler. If you look over on the left-hand side of the photo, out at the edge of the window, you can see all kinds of little holes there. We say that the window is fenestrated. Fenestra is the French word for window, fenestre. And so we said the window is fenestrated there. But now look at the angler's image. He's also all broken up. And it's very difficult for the fish to tell the difference between that broken up angler and the broken up edge of the window on both sides. Watch this. Gets even more broken up, the angler completely disappears. You can see where he is because you know where he is and you see little blobs of white. But when there's riffle water, the image of the angler is so broken up that the fish really doesn't understand what it is and is really not concerned about it. Now, yes, if you waded right on top of him and got up here in the way at the top of the photo and got up in the center of the window where he could see you easily, fine and dandy. But if you're over there, and he's only about 15 or 20 feet away from me, but in that broken up area, it's very difficult for you to see him. I have a friend named Ozzy Ozovich who listened to a bunch of my talks one time and said, you know, I'm going to make a video of that. And he did. And it was a really great video. He had an underwater camera that he put on an 8-foot pole. And he would go out and he would poke the pole down in the water, find trout, film what they were doing, watch them underwater, watch how they moved around in the underwater currents and all kinds of stuff. And he wanted to do something in the riffle. So he walked in, stuck the camera underwater, and he went, oh! He'd put the camera right on the tail of an 18-inch brown. Now, the reason I know it was an 18-inch brown, and the reason they know it was an 18-inch brown, is because his brother Joe was there fishing. And he called out, hey, Joe, there's a big brown right here in front of me. Come down and cast to it. Joe comes down, flips out a muddler, and the fish takes it. And they got the whole thing. They got the fish laying there, the muddler coming, the fish takes the thing and everything. And then, of course, they measured it, and it was 18 inches. How can you get so close to a big fish like that in a riffle? Well, because the fish doesn't see you. You have no concern visually to the fish. We've all had the experience of casting upstream in a riffle and retrieving the fly and then have a big fish take a shot at it right in front of us. And we think that the fish followed the fly all the way downstream and then took it right before we pulled it out because it thought the fly was going to escape. No, 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 no. That fish was there the whole time. One of the things we need to understand about fishing riffles is you can walk right up on top of fish in riffles. I fished not Henry's Fork, Bighorn and Henry's Fork, but the Bighorn, when the tricos were coming down and the water was just blanketed with insects, just absolutely blanketed. And there were big fish just rising everywhere. And we were fishing in the shallows along the edge in water that was not deep enough to cover the top of my wading shoes. And just pulling out one big brown after another in that water. And I was only casting like 15 feet. Why? Because the fish are there feeding in that super shallow water. They couldn't really see me in the riffle, and I could get right up there and get real close where I could watch everything that was going on. It was really pretty amazing. I've caught a lot of fish doing that over the years. Now, we need to understand that fish also hear us. Fish have two mechanisms for hearing. One is called the lateral line mechanism. The other one is called an ear. They actually have an ear inside their head. They don't have the three parts that we have. We have an outer ear, you know, this is our flap on the outside. We have a middle ear and we have an inner ear. They just have the inner ear mechanism. The reason they don't need to have the outer ear and the second part is because they're in water and they're basically made of water. So the sound goes right through their bodies. So they can hear, and if you put a hydrophone in a lake and listen, there's sound all over the place. And fish are hearing that all the time. The lateral line mechanism, however, is a completely different kind. Oops, what's going on here now? Oh, this is stupid. There we go back. Here we go. All right. Lateral line mechanism. So the lateral line mechanism actually detects what we call displacement waves. You know, if you throw a rock in the water, you get those waves coming out. When you wade, you got waves coming out. All right. Those are displacement waves. That is, energy has pushed the water aside, and it's generated a wave which moves outward. Displacement waves don't go very far. Now, sound in water goes 5 times faster than it does in air. So an angler on the other side of the lake drops the anchor into the bottom of the boat. It's a mile away. So it goes clunk, 2, 3, 4, 5. You hear a clunk? This is what the fish hears. Clunk, 1 clunk. It travels 5 times faster. with 5 times less decrease in intensity. So sound underwater to the fish is just always there. It's like white noise in the background. Lateral line mechanism, on the other hand, detects displacement waves that are close. So if a predator comes walking along and the displacement wave gets pushed out and the fish feels that, they take off. That's why we need to wade carefully and move slowly so that they don't hear us coming with that lateral line mechanism. The lateral line mechanism is extremely sensitive. You can put trout in a aquarium, put them in 100% darkness, put minnows in there with them, and they'll swim around and catch and eat every minnow and never bump the side of the aquarium. The reason they don't bump is because as they get close, the amount of water they displace ahead of them changes, and they feel that. And even though they don't see anything, they know there's something there and they turn away from it. So we need to understand that this lateral line mechanism is a very, very sensitive mechanism. However, how sensitive do you think it is when you're fishing in the Madison? I mean, with all that background noise, the crashing and the banging and the gurgling and all the water moving, if you make any noise in wading, the water immediately washes away any displacement waves that you make. So you can walk right up on top of them practically. Now, don't run on top of them, just walk very, very quietly and move smoothly. You can get right up on them with no problem at all. But let me put you in a place like this. See, completely different. Now, notice very carefully, this is my wife Nancy fishing. Notice, not a single ripple coming from her body. Notice that, nothing. She's just right there, just perfectly still. Fish is jumping around, of course, and she caught it over by the bank over there. There were fish rising along the bank. But you can't make any waves in a place like this. If you do, if you generate wading waves and they go spreading up through that pool, any fish that are close by are going to go down, and the other fish are going to be put on alert. And when the line comes splashing in, that's the end of it. You really have to pay attention to what you're doing in this kind of a situation. Now, we're talking about fishing lakes earlier on in the business meeting. Lakes are one of those kind of places. If the wind is rippling on the surface, hey, you can paddle right up on top of it. If it's not, you better be really careful, and you better be really careful in your casting. Don't try to get too close too fast. Now, anglers and predators are colored like the surroundings. You don't see them wearing a fluorescent orange hat and pink shirt. You can barely see them at all, as a matter of fact. You can see the flash off the rod, though, can't you? And that's another one of the reasons why I try to cast a little bit low rather than casting with the rod up, because the rod does flash. Charlie Brooks was a major in the U.S. Air Force, and he moved to West Yellowstone, Montana, to live specifically after he retired, because he figured West Yellowstone was the best place in the whole United States that he could go and catch big brown trout, and he caught a lot of them. When he was going down there years before he actually retired, he would go down there, and that's why he knew it was such a good place, because he would get out and fish, and he fished all over the United States. Well, every time he'd go down there, he'd hear these stories about a guy they called Old Monotone. Never met the guy, and people would always say, "Oh, Monotone caught another big one." Well, he was in the bar actually down in Jackson Hole having lunch one day, and somebody came in and said, "I saw Old Monotone today." Of course, he perked right up and said, "Well, where was he?" He said, "He's up on the fire hole. He's over in Muleshoe Bend. He's crawling around in his gut up there, and he had on camouflage clothes, and his rod was all dull, and boy, he caught a big one there." Charlie goes, "No wonder I can't meet Old Monotone. He was Old Monotone." Yeah, he was the guy that nobody ever met, because he never wanted to meet anybody. He was a tremendous fisherman. He really was, and a great guy. But he even put on camouflage paint on his face. I don't think you have to go to that extent. I just think you need to blend in a little bit better than sometimes we often do. I mean, if you wear a bright yellow rain jacket, even though you're on your knees, they will see you, and they will see your movements, even though you're on your knees. You can be on your belly in bright yellow like that, and they'd see it, because everything around you is differently colored, and you'll stand out strongly against the background. And any movement that you make, especially in water like this, which is so calm, they'll see you for sure. Now, here's something very interesting. Fish are always deeper than they seem to be. The water is always deeper than it seems to be. The reason is When the fish looks at you, okay, look at the solid line here on the fish over on the left-hand side. You can see the solid line. That's the light coming from you, bending and going to the fish's eye. The light coming from the fish goes up and bends the other way to your eye, and you see in a straight line. You don't see the fish around the corner. You see in a straight line. And that means that the fish is actually shallower than it appears, deeper than it appears to be. When you're 30 feet away, it's 3 times deeper. When you're 20 feet away, it's 2 times deeper. When you're 10 feet away, it's 1.5 times deeper. And if you're straight on top of it and looking down, it's 1.333 times deeper. That's because refraction of water is 1.33 and the refraction of air is 1. You cannot change that, but you can understand it, which means that you're walking along the edge of the lake. You look out by the weeds, and there's a big old brown out there cruising along. Looks like he's only down there about a foot away, foot deep. So you cast your fly out about 5 feet in front of him, expecting him to take it. Nothing happens. You spend all day fussing around, changing flies, changing them, trying over. He wasn't down there 1 foot. He's down there 3 feet. Because you're 30 feet away. It's 3 times deeper than he looks. He's down there 3 feet. You should have been casting 15 feet ahead of him, so your fly had plenty of chance to sink down and get down there to him. Now, I've known about this for a long, long time. But one time, 1973, 72 actually, summer of 1972, Nancy and Jason and I were fishing in Montana. And I was fishing on Armstrong Spring Creek. And there was not much going on in the stream, so I went into the back slough. And I was looking, there were a lot of big rainbows cruising around in there. And I put on a size 16 brassy, and I cast it out in front of this fish that was cruising by. Nothing. Cast and cast and cast. Couldn't get anything interested. Finally, I stuck the rod under my arm and just sat there and watched the fish, trying to figure out what in the heck they were doing. A big one came cruising by in front of me and closed its mouth. I instinctively struck and I had him. That line had been in the water for several minutes, so the fly had plenty of chance to sink way down there. That fish was actually 3 times deeper than I thought it was. It looked like it was down there a couple of feet, probably down like 6 feet. Ever since then, I've been really, really careful about approaching fish because they're deeper, so their window is bigger. I've been very, very careful about making sure the presentation is positioned in such a way that the nymph has time to sink, or positioned far enough upstream so they don't throw it right in the window. In so doing, it allows us to more precisely put the fly where we need to put it and to give it enough time to get down to the fish's depth if we're trying to fish a little deeper than just on the surface. Now here's a meter stick, 40 inches. If you look very carefully, you can see that the water line is right on 20. The stone you see at the bottom is that same stone that we looked at earlier. But that is 20 inches from the stone up to where 20. And now look from 20 all the way up to Nancy's finger. Why, that 20 inches looks like it's 10 inches. The water is twice as deep as you think it is. You cannot change that. We've all had the experience of stepping in the stream and the bottom didn't exactly meet us where we thought it was. That's because the bottom is twice as deep as you think it is. One of the reasons that I wear polarizing sunglasses when I'm wading around is so I can really see the bottom better. But the other thing I understand is it's a lot deeper. Here's a really cool thing you can do. Next time you go fishing, if you're in a stream, just look over at your buddy. If he's standing in water up to his knees, it'll look like his feet come right out of the bottom of his legs, of his knees, right? Just come right out of there. It's amazing the difference that it makes when you begin to understand this, because like I said, it's always deeper than you think. And when you step in, you have to be careful that you don't step in and find yourself, stepping in, expecting it to be 1 foot deep and being 2 feet deep and you falling in on it. So the other thing, as I said before, is the positioning of your fly and the size of the window that the fish has. Remember that the distance from the fish to the front of the window is going to be about the same depth as the fish is. So here, if you thought the fish was only 1 foot down, you'd think the window was only 1 foot and you'd throw your fly up there 1.5 feet. The window was actually 2 feet and you threw it right into the window, probably spooked him. So again, you really have to think about this and put it into practice when you're out fishing, begin experimenting with things and so on. It's amazing what you can learn doing that. Of course, we all know predators like to wear sunglasses and a special secret hat. And boy, I've seen a lot of funny looking secret hats sometimes, including this one, of course. But polarizing sunglasses are probably the most important piece of gear that you own as a fly fisher. Why? Because they remove glare. Remember now, glare is the light that skips off the surface. And it's actually polarized light with its waves going sideways. Polarizing sunglasses have their slits going up and down So they remove the sideways light and allow you to readily see the fish that's hanging right here, a 3-pound rainbow. You cannot see it. All you can see is the glare. I took this picture, turned the polarizing filter so that it was filtering, and took this picture. 2 pictures back to back. Now, let me just back up a second. You can't see that fish in there, but you can see it here. Obviously, if you can see it, you have a much better chance of throwing your fly to it. In fact, I did. I was standing on a lake with my back into a ponderosa pine. I just took the fly off, bent the rod, and shot it out there, bow and arrow cast, and he came and took it right away. I would have, if I had never seen that fish, I would have just waded right in there. But polarizing sunglasses allow you to be able to see those kinds of things and cut out that glare, giving you a much, much better chance as a predator. All this stuff on gear, of course, is in a book I did called Fly Gear, but let's go racing wildly onward. The angler's predator knows habits of fish and where to find them. Boy, this is really something else. Everybody wants to fish right on the edge of that heavy water out there, that big current tongue coming down. Probably not a lot of fish hanging out there. If they are, they're going to be right on the bottom and hanging very tight. This area along the bank is what I call the secret river. It's really, most people wade that area. The reason that I call it the secret river is because hardly anybody ever fishes it. And yet it's an extremely effective place to fish if there aren't a lot of people wading up and down the river. You go fish the Madison River in the summertime, for example. The secret river is just full of people wading up and there aren't any fish in the secret river. They're all out in the middle, huddled down behind a rock someplace, shaking because they've been waded on all day long. What I do when I fish the Madison is I wait until about 7 o'clock. All the anglers have left. I go find a place where it's a little deeper along the bank and just sit down and wait. Pretty soon noses are poking out and I catch a whole bunch of fish. Why? Because as soon as there's no anglers there, the fish get into quiet water. Why? Because the water's slow moving. They don't have to fight it. There's a lot more food there, food coming in from the bank, plus food that's it's much easier for any food organisms there than it is out in that heavy water in the middle. So there's a lot more food there. The secret river is one of those kind of places that a lot of people pass up. It should be a place that you fish more frequently. Joe Brooks probably said it better than anybody when he said, fish it before you wade it. And in these particular rivers, this is in Patagonia again, this is 11,000 feet here, 10 to 11,000 feet in this river. All the fish were in the secret river. There were no fish at all in the middle. They were all in the secret river. And that's where we caught all of them. The angler as a predator is persistent. Now, this is when I lived in Wisconsin. And there were lots and lots of king salmon, coho salmon, steelhead, and big browns. Now, I haven't really fished for steelhead out here very much. Well, not at all, actually, because I've been remodeling my house. But I've caught lots and lots of steelhead in the lake states and lots of salmon. On bright sunny days, you couldn't catch anything like this. It wouldn't even look at a fly. But as soon as it started to get dark, these big guys would start to fight. And if they started to fight, you could always catch 1 or 2 of them. Well, this particular day, we'd been fishing all day long, and my friend said, hey, let's go home. I said, I'm not going home till they throw us off. And on this particular river, you could stay for half an hour after dark. And they did come and throw us off a couple times. Anyway, this particular night, just as it was getting dark, these big guys started blasting around in there. And I just nymph fished to it upstream with a black leech. Just put on a strike indicator and a black leech and a shot out about 8 inches ahead of it, pitched it up there and let it come tumbling down. And all of a sudden, this indicator stopped and I had him. And away he went. My friend said, did you see that big one going past me? And I said, yes, he's on my line. Yeah, this is a pretty nice fish here. This is probably 35 pounds. And back in the days when they first put them in there, we got the kings up to 60 pounds. But this is a big king for the lake states right now. And here's a big king that's hooked. And look at the rod. Most people fight the fish with the rod up. Putting the rod up does almost nothing. In fact, this is an 8-weight, and bent like it is right now with the rod up, I would be putting maybe a couple, 3 ounces of pressure on the fish, that's all. But pulling from the side, I can bend that rod right down into the butt, and I can literally put pounds of pressure on it. Why? Why does that work so well? Because fish swim side to side, not up and down. Whales swim up and down. And I know you think you're fishing for whales, but you're not. You're fishing for fish, and they swim side to side. Their muscles are designed, remember that chevron shape the muscles are arranged in? That's so that the fish can push against the water with its tail, and that's the way it swims. It literally pressures against the side with its tail. And as it does, that pushes it forward. Its muscles are designed to push against the side. So when I pull from the side, I'm pulling directly against the working of its muscles. And you'd be amazed how fast you can move a big fish doing this. I mean, you pull up on them and all you're pulling up on is dead weight. You pull from the side and you're pulling against the swimming muscles. You can turn their head, you can move them around, you can do all kinds of things with them. Most people fight the fish by what I call the prayer method. That is, they stick their rod up in the air, put their hands together, go, please let me land this fish, please let me land this fish, please let me land this fish. That's not the way to do it. Get side pressure on them immediately, as fast as you possibly can, and keep side pressure on them. You know, if you go fish for like a tarpon down in the Keys, for example, when you got a good guide, not just a guide, a good guide, and you hook a big tarpon and it runs straight away from the boat, you know, you can't turn that fish if it's running straight away. They can't swim backward. They can only swim forward. So what the guide does is it fires up the boat. The guide will fire up the boat and he'll run at an angle to the fish so you can pull from the side and turn the fish's head. If you just pull them straight, if they're just holding the rod up and letting the fish run, you'll never turn them, not a tarpon, especially when they get up in that 125 to 150 pound range, nothing will happen. But you get side pressure on them, you can turn them right away. What's happening now is guys are bringing the blue water tactics into tarpon fishing. And the blue water tactics, what they do is they hook something like a sailfish or a marlin, a blue marlin or a striped marlin, and they have the drag set at about 2 pounds. They have 600 yards of backing on the line, and they just let the fish run on the surface. And as soon as it starts to slow down, the captain backs the boat down, and the guy just cranks line as fast as he can. And he sets a drag at 4 pounds. Then when the fish runs, he just lets him run. Now he runs out there maybe 400 yards. Back the boat down, crank him back in, set the drag at 6 pounds. Now the fish takes off running. About 200 yards, he's done. Crank it, set the drag at 8 pounds, you'll go, 15 or 20 feet, bring them in, they got them. They will land 120-pound sailfish in less than 20 minutes. They're starting to do that now with tarpon because the guys that developed the tactic out on the blue water are also tarpon guides. So what they do is they tell their guys, crank her, put the thing on 2 pounds and just let them run. Then we'll crank them back. We'll run the boat out there, put it on 4 pounds. And they're landing 100-pound tarpon in 15 minutes doing that. It's amazing. Pull from the side, put side pressure on, you'll be absolutely stunned at how fast you can retrieve, how fast you can get fish in. Now, an angler as a predator also knows how to approach prey in stealth situations. And by stealth situations, I mean sneaking up on fish. You can see I'm down on my hands and knees. This is the very first picture that we had when I opened the program was me laying on my belly on this side of behind these plants right here, looking at a big fish down there. It's a double-digit fish. This is New Zealand. I didn't cross the top of the pool. I walked down and crossed the bottom of the pool because crossing the bottom of the pool does not send dirty water down. If I'd crossed the top and sent a slug of dirty water down, I could have put the fish down. That's how sensitive they are in New Zealand. And there's 30 million sheep in New Zealand and 3 million people. So you put on sheep-colored clothing and you crawl along on your hands and knees going, bah, bah. And the rod in your teeth, fish, then they just think you're a sheep and they have no. You just stay down, that's all. Stay low. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast 30 feet of fly line and a 15-foot leader onto the end of which is attached a size 10 gold-ribbed hare's ear nymph with a couple of turns of lead wire on it. That's all. I can see the fish. You see the surface is wind ruffled, but it was calm before he took this foot, and I could see the fish. Now, how do you cast 30 feet of line plus a 15-foot leader? Well, easy. You pull out some line, and then you just start whipping it back and forth, and you keep letting it out, letting it out, letting it out, letting it out, and finally put it on the water. If you do that in New Zealand, every fish is gone. You want to make one cast, and the whole cast is 45 feet, 30 feet of line plus the leader. In one shot, one back cast, one forward cast. Question is, how the heck do you do that? The answer is, look where I'm positioned. You see there's sand in front of me there. What I did was I pulled the line out and I coiled it back and forth, just back and forth in front of me on the sand there. Then I held the fly hook point up. Try it hook point down. You'll say, oh yeah, it was the other way. Is it dig it out of your thumb? Hook point up in my line hand, my left hand, because I'm a right hand caster. I pointed the rod to my left across the front of my body. Then sweeping the rod around in front of me and to the side, to my right hand side, pulls all that line right up off the ground. I let go of the fly, perfect back cast, sidearm back cast. Just flip my hand over and make a perfect sidearm forward cast. First cast, fly dropped about 8 feet in front of the fish, and I just watched. The fish came up. As soon as I saw the fish go back down again, I pulled, and 10-pound plus rainbow trout. And there you can see the fly sticking in his snout. That's the way you want to do it. You want to take your time. You want to stalk the fish. You want to hunt. New Zealand is a place where you really, really, really have to be the predator. You really have to stalk and hunt every fish. You can't just go and cast and hope to catch something. You hunt fish. And you can actually say, oh, that's only a 20-inch fish. I don't want that one. The average fish that I've caught in New Zealand going down there at least a dozen times is 24.5 inches. That's the average. So yes, I've had some 30, and yes, I've had some 20. And 24.5 is the average size. So take your time, think it through. Now notice back up here for just a second. Notice that I didn't come up to this position and go, now how in the heck am I going to cast out there? Let me figure out some way to do this. And then fuss around and try to figure out, no. I had to have that all figured out before I ever went over there and had practiced it in the yard to make sure that I could do that, because I knew I was going to be fishing down from my knees. And you know, I do this all the time. It doesn't matter where I'm fishing. Lots of times I'm down on my hands and knees crawling up on fish, get close enough to be able to cast so that they're not going to see me. I'm the predator. I'm not just a guy out there walking around whistling and pretending I'm the shadow caster standing up on a big rock in the middle of the river doing a cast that doesn't really exist. All right? You know, Jason and I laugh about it all the time. It wasn't really a cast. It was really Norman's description. It was a metaphor for Norman talking about his brother Paul in the movie. And of course, Jason had to invent that cast, which he did. But anyway, let's go on here. So I practiced that before everyone over there. I knew exactly how to do it, and I was very comfortable being able to do it. Practicing your casting, figuring things out. People say, well, I practice when I go fishing. No, you don't. You don't practice when you go fishing. What you're doing when you're fishing is fishing. You're not practicing anything unless you take your fly off and don't pretend you're fishing and just practice, which almost nobody ever does. You need to practice. You need to get a place, set up a place. And by the way, did you know that Portland has the largest casting pond in the United States, maybe in the world? Does anybody who know who Marvin Hedge was? Marvin Hedge was the guy who introduced the double haul in 1934 at the casting games in St. Louis. He was from Portland, as was Mooch Abrams, or Maurice Abraham. That's his nickname was Mooch Abrams. He's the guy that actually taught Marvin and coached him how to do that. And from that win that he made in 1934, he came back to the city of Portland and convinced them that they need to build a casting pond. And they built a massive, beautiful casting pond. It's still in existence. You can still go down there and cast. Fabulous place. And it's literally the biggest one in the world. Anyway, so you can get out of the casting pond, you can get on your hands and knees, and you can practice doing this. Anyway, that's where I was going to with all that. So let's go racing wildly onward. Yeah, that's the end of the program today. There are books and things available if you're interested. I think somebody has my address, but I've got Reading the Water, Long Flies, Anglers, Predator, and Fish Gear, all available. They're all $25. That's postage paid to you. And if you want the Perfect Cast DVD, it's just $15. So let's stop there. Let's see here. Let's undo that and go to end the show. All right. So if we need to go back to where everybody can see everybody again. There we are.
And I'm sure we have some time for some questions.
If you got time I got lots of time for questions. So ask away.
Everyone,
so
muted, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I have a. Yeah, I'm not muted. I don't think.
You're not. Go.
So my question was, are we talking about when you said, the casting ponds in Port, are you talking about the ones in Selwood in Portland?
Westmoreland.
Westmoreland, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
There's a
Yeah.
big park down there.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I know it well.
Yeah, those are fabulous ponds.
Yeah.
More questions? Stunned
Well,
into silence, huh?
I have a question that maybe is more towards, and you didn't address it, but in fishing the flats, salt flats.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I was kind of curious about clothing and how well fish see through the water and see you. Let's say when you're bone fishing and you're out wading. I've seen a lot of folks wearing tights, and I've seen folks nowadays wearing tights and wearing colored tights. And I've always kind of thought about whether if you're not wearing something that's sand white, and whether you're just scaring the hell out of the fish.
Yeah, they see you. They sure do. And, you know, when guys tell you about bone fishing, you go, you know, you had to cast 70, 80 feet to catch those bones all the time. The reason they have to cast so far, number one, is they're wearing bright colored clothing. Number two, they're standing up on the deck of a boat. So there's, you know, the top of their head is 10 feet above the water. So fish can see them easily from 60 feet away. And I mean, I've caught lots of bonefish that were under 20 feet away.
Okay.
You know, just waiting very, very quietly, just standing very, very still and just letting the fish come to you, and then just do a tiny little bit of a sidearm cast. It's amazing. Yeah. But I typically wear blue and or, you know, sandy white colored kind of stuff when I'm doing. Typically I wear sort of khaki colored pants and a blue shirt and a green hat. So I can look sort of like the sky or like a mangrove or whatever.
Okay. Thanks.
And speaking of that, by the way, do you know how to make what we call a hook curve? No. Let me explain it to you. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. So if I come forward with my cast, and then I put my finger out like my fly rod, and then I twist my wrist quickly and go that way across my face, like that. That will actually curve the line. Will actually hook it out in front. Still with me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in sidearm like this, and I'm going to flip my wrist up like that. Still with me? If I do this and the line curves to my left, if I do this, which direction is the line going to curve? Up. That's exactly right. So I got bones coming at me. If I throw the line out like that and the fly hits the water, I'll probably spook them. And they're close. So what I do is I make a sidearm cast, and then I make the hook curve up. What happens is the line goes out, climbs up a little bit, and then falls just plink in the water. It's a very, very delicate way to present a dry fly or to present a crazy Charlie to a bonefish, or anyway, it's a really very delicate way to do it. All you got to do is come in sidearm and flip your wrist up like that. We call it a torque twist. You twist up like that. Very simple to do, very, very effective. And of course, you can do that in all kinds of directions and that kind of stuff. But that's one of the ways that we minimize impact on the surface with bonefish. More questions? Cooney, you got to have a bunch of questions.
Oh,
well,
I fell asleep.
I have another question about leader length. So we're talking a lot about stealthy casts. I mean, if like I'm nymphing for steelhead a couple days ago.
Sure.
You know, I'm dropping twice the water, what appears to me to be twice the water depth beneath an indicator, and I'm hooking up a fish.
Yep.
So is there a rule of thumb that you use? I'm not talking steelhead necessarily, but trout in general, for your leader length, how much you want to be beyond the line, the tip of your fly line?
I again depends on what I'm doing.
Okay.
If I'm fishing less nymphs, for example, my nymph leader is typically about 10 feet long.
Right.
And typically I set the indicator about 1.5 times the depth of the water, because typically when you're nymphing for trout anyway, you're typically in riffly water or where a riffle drops into a pool or something like that. So 1.5 times the depth works well. Steelhead fishing, I might set it to 2 to even 3 times the depth of the water, because sometimes it can be pretty fast and you need that fly to stay down on the bottom.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
Gary, I've got a question about the sound part.
Mhm.
I tend to, I always have studs on my boots, and I walk with a wading staff, which has a metal tip on it.
Mhm.
How much does that hurt to be using those kind of devices?
Not really at all. If you're clunking up and down the river like a wounded hippopotamus, yeah, it makes a big difference. But if you're just walking quietly along, not trying to do too much, you go underwater with a hydrophone in a riffle and it's just roaring all the time. Occasional little clink and bang doesn't really mean anything to the fish.
Good to know.
Anyone else? More questions?
Yeah, I have a question. It's about the fish's perception of a fly as it goes over the top. If they're on a sunny day and that fish is looking up, is he actually seeing the color of that fly, or is he seeing the shade of the fly because the sun's in the background?
Depends on which angle he's looking at. If he's looking right at the sun, of course, all he'll see is silhouette, just like you would see. If he's looking at any other angle, he'll see the color. Sure. I mean, that's why all the gunfighters of the Old West always came out of the sun, right? Make it hard for the other guy to see. Well, it's the same way with the fish. If it's looking into the sun, yeah, it's just going to see silhouette. But now you got to remember this. When the fish gets 2 inches away, it's going to see everything, color included. And it's coming up to take the fly. The closer it gets, the easier it is to see the color. So people say, well, you know, I was fish that they don't see it. Yes, they do. They can see color. They can see all kinds of, they can see thousands of colors. And they can be very sensitive to color. Sometimes not so much. People will say, well, all I ever fish is that size 14 parachute Adams, and it's gray. And when they take it up. You know what a parachute Adams is? It's not a dry fly. It's an emerger. And the body is actually down on the surface film. And to the trout, that thing looks like an insect trying to crawl out of its husk. So the gray is not that much of a concern to it. I mean, it looks sort of like the husk coming off of it. And, you know, a size 14 parachute Adams, if I was going to fish a dry fly any place, just fishing a dry fly, that'd probably be the fly I'd take. Simply because it is an emerger style, and because fish are used to seeing that kind of stuff on the water all the time. And during a hatch, hey, I'd put on the emerger every time rather than putting on a full-blown dry fly.
Well, excellent presentation, and thank you so much for fielding the questions. I think we're all a bit smarter. I know I'm quite a bit smarter, and that's the purpose of this.
Well, it's been lots of fun, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
And you can thank Cooney for beating me up for how many years did we do, Cooney? 4 years or something before we got this all pulled together.
Well,
oh my
Cooney is anything but relentless.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Cooney. Thank you, Chris, for putting this together. And Chris, do we have a presentation for next month lined up, or?
Yes, we do. We have one for March. It'll be with Greg Hatton, and it's going to be on a wood drift boat. And I'm not quite sure what river he's chosen, but he's done a lot of presentations on that. And he's been on OPB doing some of those. His is mainly on wild and scenic rivers.
Outstanding. Well, thank you, Chris, for putting this together, and thank you, Gary, for attending.
Thanks,
You're
Gary.
so welcome.
Great presentation.
Thanks for your attendance, guys.
And
Always
thank
fun.
you
Thank
for
you.
all the members.
Yeah.
Remember to get a hold of your fish master if you plan to be going on a trip coming up. Merrill Lake cleanup here on the 1st of April. Manley Creek tree planting towards the end of the week. If the